Hello friends and followers, I hope you've been well, and welcome to episode 23, and it's now nearing the end of May, which is our 7th month on the Out There channel. Well, technically it's 6.5 months because I started at the end of November. So we're moving on to month 7. Before I begin, I've got some news I'm going to cover before I start the episode. This is my computer setup. Most people laugh at it. I had one member that doesn't have Facebook or Twitter, etc. said it was a cyborg computer. I can't tell you how many times I've opened it up and fixed it, but I can't fix it anymore because apparently it's a bad batch of motherboards in these models where the solder has got the wrong mix, and if it gets too hot it tends to unsolder chips inside. So far I've lost part of the video system and the charge circuit, and also the fan. I've replaced it twice now and it's seizing up, so I'm not too sure how much longer it will have, but if I disappear, it's because this computer's crapped out, and I will try and communicate via my tablet instead, I guess, but I won't be able to create any videos. I thought I'd show you the collection of photographs that I upload to Twitter and Facebook and don't make a video of, but I'll make a video here by showing them to you. These are some of the debunks I've done on Secure Team in the last month or so you can see what these UFOs were really. The first one here is meant to be leaked footage of Area 51, which is simply just a blue bottle fly flying in front of the Handycam lens and hovering there and also zooming off a wee bit and then coming back to the lens, also landing on the lens and then taking off again. Most of these also made the newspapers, and I think this Beamship one even made the Fox News channel. Now it turns out to be a time-lapse photograph of a search helicopter. I think there was some protests happening when it was caught on a security cam or something similar to that, and where it takes a shot every so many seconds. And then someone turned it into a video with the beam moving along. But I'm not too sure on this one. I think it's maybe all CGI because the light seems to fade off between the bars and the fence too quickly. This footage was very bad, but I managed to enhance it and catch a frame in a few seconds that it was a bird flying across the vision of the telescope when it was filming a moon crater. And you can clearly see it flapping its wings, and here I got a frame and match it to a blackbird. People that think Tyler is changing his ways and improving are clearly mistaken. Here he said it may be a plane but never did any analysis. I took one frame, enhanced it, and as you can see it's clearly a plane. The next few are fairly obvious, so I won't talk about them too much, but they're clearly reflections or balloons, rocks, you name it, but none of them are clearly UFOs in the sense of alien visitors. They're just IFOs which have not been identified yet. Well, clearly, obviously, some of them are identified because that tank rock one is just rubbish. But then here's your number one source for leaks. The last one here is one I did for Giorgio with the funny hairdo from Ancient Aliens. I thought it was quite funny when I saw a picture of the dog, and it just reminded me of him. Remember guys, question everything. People will pull the wool over your eyes otherwise. Now that brings me to this subject here of the Gulf Breeze UFO flap of the 1980s. I will be looking into the facts and putting in my own theories or own spin on things. As you can read here, at the time they had about 6,000 residents living in the Florida Gulf Breeze area. As you can read, the UFO flap started in November the 11th in 1987, and there's been various sightings by other people as well, which I will talk about. But here are some satellite photos of the area, and I've zoomed in where you can see there are airports. There's a normal passenger airport, and up the other end is a military airport for the Navy, and also a submarine base there, which has led to theories that UFOs are being sighted there because of the nuclear subs. Some other researchers have sort of made comment that most UFOs are sighted around nuclear bases, so there might be something in that. This report here says there were over 200 reports of UFO sightings, not just by the famous Ed Walters, who we will talk about soon, but he took the best close-up videos of a UFO, and other people managed to get balls of light and were sort of dismissed as maybe the Air Force there. I found this paragraph from a book online where it talks about how some of the MUFON investigators went back with a group of 25 and filmed the night skies there and caught over 100 UFOs on video. And here's a paragraph saying that it was doing complex maneuvers, so it couldn't have been a plane. And there's also been reports of planes chasing orbs in the area, as per the review description here by some guy living in the area that purchased the book. So I looked online to see if I could find any websites that had databases of all sightings logged, and this one here, UFO Stalker, reckons there's over 4,000 sightings in that area since 1987 onwards, and only 64 in Gulf Breeze, so it doesn't sort of match the 200 plus there, but as we know that most sightings don't get reported. But if MUFON had a team there with a group of people filming, you'd think they would be logged in a database. And now if we look at some of the reports listed in the MUFON database, it's even far less. They reckon there's only 40 in Gulf Breeze. But I think they remove sightings once they have been debunked. You would think that nothing deleted from the database and left in there with a photograph and explanation of it being debunked, so people can see how it was investigated and debunked. So yeah, it's a wee bit strange that cases disappear from their system, but I suppose it get very big. Maybe they move it to a secondary archive database. Perhaps someone that knows MUFON or knows more about how their system works can help us out there in the comments. These are the only few photographs I saw from other people that took UFOs in the area. It's an old case, so maybe it was pre-internet, and obviously YouTube wasn't around in those days for people to upload and share information like it is today. There was a show called Cover Up Live 1988, which featured some residents from Gulf Breeze. There was about 50, I suppose, in the audience, and they talked about their eyewitness accounts, and a kid also talked about his visual sighting, and none of them actually had any video or photographs to show, which is maybe typical back in those days, because not everybody had cameras like we do nowadays. And on the show they brought Bruce McBee on, and also Nathan, who said that Ed Walters' photographs were double exposed, and McAbee disagreed and said he's seen the stereo photograph taken by the special MUFON system, where they had two Polaroid cameras on a stand and he had to press two buttons simultaneously. And he said it was definitely not hoaxed, but we can't find any of these original photographs, especially the stereo ones, to analyze, and they're only printed in a paperback book, which is very small pages, where you need to make up a special viewer to actually see it in 3D, of course. And of course they're going to be very small and grainy and not like the original photographs from the camera. So it's been very hard to find original photographs of Ed Walters, and a lot of them are obviously been touched up with the brightness, as you can see in the collection I have to follow. I'm not sure what those red patches are, whether it was on the original photograph and it's just been digitally scanned and brightened and someone's played around with the contrast, but there's definitely a thin white line going straight down the middle there. Whether that's part of it being hoaxed, I don't know. As you can see, it's quite washed out, very white, and that normally means it's been double exposed, to me anyway. And this one here shows the road in the daytime without the UFO, as a comparison to Ed's photograph, which is the most talked about photograph. Some saying it's double exposed and the shadows don't work, and others have reanalyzed it and said that they're normal and correct. So as you can read above, a couple of experts tried to reanalyze them in the 90s. They seem to think the photos were also real, and the witness that come forward to say he was hoaxing, story didn't add up to how he explained how they hoaxed, and also didn't agree with the debunkers' double exposure techniques. You may notice the photo of the UFO reflecting off the road was also a daylight photo. Also note that was taken through a truck car window, so it has some reflections. As you can see, he took quite a few photographs, and the story gets a bit more weird as he talks about a blue beam that comes down to try and lift him up, and he broke free, and also this alien creature, which doesn't look like a typical alien grey that you get on most of the eyewitnesses, is apparently knocking at the doors of his house and hypnotizes him. So who was Ed? This guy here, he was an entrepreneur and also a home builder, according to this article. And that's a picture of him and his wife, who also backed up the claims of seeing the UFO. Ed Walters' claims start to crumble for several reasons, and mainly because a model was found in the house that he sold in the attic, which begs to ask is why would he leave evidence behind, and was it planted by someone that wanted to get at him, to discredit him, or was it a model he built after seeing the UFO to get his head around it? So it opens up more questions than answers. If you have a look at the comparison photo of it lit up with a light inside to the actual photograph, doesn't look 100% identical. The little light on the top is wider and less long, and also the light in the windows is not quite the same, or not showing through. And why is it so dented? Could that be that it was discarded because it got dented from him hanging it from a tree, perhaps? So again, we're not really sure on that. Ed claimed it was planted to try and discredit him, and he said he wouldn't be so stupid enough to leave a model behind if he was a hoaxer, which does kind of make sense. Other claims were that they found out Ed knew more about double exposure than he first led, and also that he sold his house to get away from the public view, but the house they bought was much more classy, expensive, and he made a lot of money from also selling books and TV rights, which probably added up to a fair chunk of money back in those days. By the looks of those totals here of 200,000 plus 400,000 and 500,000, I guess he may have made $1 million out of it, plus. A son of a lawyer called Tommy Smith claimed he helped Ed Walter with the hoaxing. As you can read above here, there's a lot of information talked about. I will talk about more on this later with the MUFON investigators come in to analyse it all. There were 2 MUFON investigators appointed to investigate Ed Walters. Their names were Rex and Carol Salisbury, and this photo here I found only on one website, and I did a Google search to see if I could find any more information on this particular photo, and I couldn't. As you can see from the reverse Google image search, I only found 4 references, and they all came back to the same source webpage. Another UFO debunking channel did a story on this and also claims that Ed Walters is proven to be guilty of double exposure because this photo was taken on his camera of the 2 MUFON people, and in between he enhanced it to see there was a UFO there. However, me looking at the original photograph, it wasn't so dark and it was clearly obviously a UFO there when the photo was taken, and if you zoom in you can see there's some fine writing above the UFO which kind of suggests that it was a poster behind the MUFON investigators, and Ed Walters' signature may have been signed in white pen above the UFO in the photo. So it doesn't prove that it was hoaxed on his camera and no one spotted it. I'm sure people noticed the UFO there. Some people seem to think that you can't fake double exposures on a Polaroid camera. Ed Walters had a Polaroid Sun 600. I have found evidence that you can do double and multiple exposures on the Polaroid 600 series of cameras, and here are some screen snapshots of how to do it, so you can see that it's possible. Most of it relies on jamming the film ejector system so it doesn't pop out on the first press, and then you just push it back in with a thin piece of plastic card like a credit card, or maybe even like a bread knife or something similar to that. And Ed could have found out a way to jam a camera using a knife and do a double exposure or multiple exposure, because he may have to have done 3 to get the light beam. The guy here demonstrates with an old camera and a model he made, and also explains how it was done, and it looks very convincing, very much like Ed Walters' photograph. So yeah, they can be faked, of course. Ed gave his camera to reporters, as you can read there, and they couldn't figure out how it was done using his camera, but maybe they weren't so clever as that last person. So how about the stereo Polaroid camera? Well, it was the 600 series, 2 of them on a stand that Ed practiced with, a camera that he was familiar with, and if he knew how to hoax, he would know how to hoax them. But they said because it was sealed with wax, that made it impossible to tamper, but I don't think so. I think you could easily peel off wax and then put more wax back on, but if you got a long knife and could jam in the photo on both of the cameras, like it was suggested, then you could do a double exposure still. So whereabouts are these stereo photos that he took? Well, there's only one in the book listed here, and Maccabee talks about the camera and what the pictures consisted of here. So is it possible to fake a model UFO as a real one? And yes, there is. There is Kevlar that was invented in 1965, and it comes in all sorts of colours and thread sizes, and it's very strong, 10 times stronger than steel, I think it is. And as you can see in this video, this guy's got a model UFO that he's flying around in front of him, and you can't see the fibre. And remember, this is a modern day video as well, and you can't see the thin wire in it. And I'll zoom in so you can have a closer look. But also VHS tapes back in the 80s was very poor, grainy and blurry. It would even aid hoaxes even more back then. Bruce Maccabee got accused of being a fraud as well, because he said it wasn't a hoax, and he wrote a chapter for his second book, which he got $20,000 for, and Bruce replied saying that that was many years after his conclusion that it was a legit sighting, and he didn't get the money till way after. A friend of Maccabee also wrote in and defended him and his morals, and talked about also that he got first-hand look at the photos, the originals, and says how bad they were, dark, and the UFO was the size of a pinhead. So they've done a lot of enhancements, zooming in and digital scanning of them since. So what did the MUFON investigators determine? Well, as you can read here, they gave scathing comments about everything, including the model, saying that Ed knew more about the model than he should have. Also that lie detector test that he took, he had a lot of influence on the type of questions that could be asked, and made sure that he could answer them truthfully so he would pass the test. And also they talk about the other second test he did, where they did a voice analysis stress test, which he also passed. So whether he's lying or not, it's still up in the air over the lie detectors and psychology tests. Also, they didn't think much of the Tommy Smith eyewitness account of helping him to hoax, so they were 50-50 on that one. And apparently he contradicted himself on the Oprah Winfrey show. And of course Ed Walters replied to the review summary about the MUFON investigators and how they distorted some things that he claims wasn't true, as you can read above. That was quite a long letter, so I just pulled out the most important bits. How about Ed Walters' video evidence? Well, I found a few videos online still, and I will put a clip in here so you can actually have a watch of them, or part of them, and you can watch the full videos in the links I provide down below in the description.
Captured these images over a span of 6 months in the town of Gulf Breeze near Pensacola, Florida. Dr. Bruce Maccabee, an optical physicist formerly with the Office of Naval Intelligence, has analyzed Ed Walters' photographs and videotape.
The most important thing about Ed's July 21st video is the presence of a shadow of the UFO on the trees, the tree line on the other side of Santa Rosa Sound. And you can see when the UFO comes into the field of view from the left-hand side, moves over towards the right, reverses and goes back off to the left. At the same time the UFO is moving, you can see a darkening, a shadow that moves along the tree line over to the right, stops, and then moves back to the left again. And that is something that I don't think anyone has ever captured on video before.
It's his analysis, and it's been heavily criticized by others in the field because some of it doesn't add up, some of it does add up. They think it was models, and unfortunately models were found in Ed Walters' old house that generically conformed to the shape of some of the vehicles that were photographed. So here we go again with another case that could be, couldn't be, maybe. It seems like there's always some disinformation or misinformation involved, and the further one looks into the case, the more problematic it becomes, and like everything else in ufology, it ends with a big question mark.
UFO hotspot Gulf Breeze, Florida, 1993. This rare UFO video sequence was shot by alleged alien contactee Ed Walters. After panning the entire horizon, a small disc-shaped object appeared overhead where just before there had been nothing. Then it suddenly disappeared. Could this be a true alien encounter? Or the product of an elaborate hoax?
I know Ed's equipment, which is basically about the simplest type of equipment you could get. That rules out the technical capability to do something sophisticated. I don't believe it was a hoax.
Researcher Bob Exler found other supportive evidence in Walters' video by comparing sunlight angles, shadows of buildings, and the object's incredible acceleration.
Most remarkable videotape, one that I could not see any way that could be artificially manufactured.
While the merits of Walters' beach UFO video continue to be debated, one thing is clear. There is a person walking and a boat in the frame at the moment the UFO disappears, making it difficult to fabricate. And this is not the only UFO video that Walters, who has claimed physical sensations signal a UFO is nearby, has shown investigators to prove he's been a magnet for sightings. In 1987, Walters, who lived close to sensitive military bases, brought these startling photos to the town newspaper. Then he went public with this extraordinary nighttime UFO video showing the same bizarre craft. Top Walters case expert Bruce Maccabee remains baffled.
But it wasn't until I spent a considerable amount of time analyzing it that I realized just how impressive it was. The shape, the structure, and the way it moved is not a characteristic of any craft that human beings make.
Even these UFOs, attributed to a mysterious man named Martin Allen, might have actually been shot by Walters, who researchers say wanted out of the public spotlight. Watch this accelerating UFO, which in slow motion doesn't look like a missile or known craft. Nor does this, which moves like the one in Walters' beach video. Here's a similar one in a third clip. It shows the craft becoming a silver streak, zooming away. In addition, this UFO recorded over Gulf Breeze by a UFO investigator named Michael Hawkins, which has stunning similarities to what Walters had first photographed and videotaped in 1987, seems to have the same kind of otherworldly propulsion capabilities.
So apparently Ed stopped filming in 1995, no more videos or photos come from him, but there has been other sightings of similar craft in other states of America, as you can see here. They could also be fakes and hoaxes, but they do look very realistic. When I thought about Ed Walters, I also thought about a channel called In Focus UFOs, by a guy called Ed, who also puts up fake models and CGI videos claiming he was abducted and taken photographs from within the craft and also of the beings inside the craft, walking around inside the craft from the outside. So you never know, he still might be producing stuff but with a new identity. That's if you believe that he was a hoaxer, because this new Ed is also a hoaxer. Also, there's a sub-weird story about Gulf Breeze, about the Doomsday Six, which was meant to be a small faction of army guys, a so-called end-of-world cult that travelled to Gulf Breeze for a mission which wasn't specified. Whether it's true or not, we don't know, but maybe the UFO event there is a connection to this story. Perhaps can do more research and find out more information on this Doomsday 6. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm still not 100% sure Ed Walters was a hoaxer after looking at all the information there. And I hope you enjoyed the episode, and hit the like button to help it get more views from searchers. And stay safe, everybody, and I'll catch you in the next episode.